Today we're going to talk about the hands-free vibrating kit, I'm pretty sure. So,
Yep.
I got, we have a couple of them, right? We have a couple of different sizes that we offer. So the hands-free vibrating kit, there's a 16-inch one and a 10-inch one. And what's nice about it is, since it's a kit, it does come with everything you need. You know, you don't need to purchase anything else. But it is like the name says, hands-free grinding kit, right? So I'll tell you that, if you've ever done any kind of cold working on your pieces, trying to grind the edge of a bowl or something, and if you have a lap grinder or if you've done it by hand, you know how time-consuming that can be. And not only just time-consuming, probably the bigger issue is sometimes it's physically demanding, right? I mean, if you're, leaning on a lap grinder, that gets kind of hard.
Right, having to hold it.
That's tiring after a short time.
As long as it takes, because you do have to hold it for quite a while.
It takes a while because
in each stage. So
yeah, this particular one is a 5-step, and I'm going to go over it a little bit more here in a minute. But it is a 5-step thing. So.
And you talked about 2 different sizes.
We got 2 different sizes. I got a 16-inch one and then a 10-inch one. So the 10-inch one is just I took it out of the box, so you can see exactly what it looks like when it comes from comes from us or comes from Covington. They're made by Covington Engineering. They make a nice a wide variety of quality tools for cold working in particular. So it comes set up like this. So there's a little hose here that acts as a guard so that the glass doesn't bounce against the aluminum top here. And then this is the polishing pad, and I'm going to show you what one looks like after it's been used, and we'll talk a little bit more about how that's done, but it comes in there all ready to go. You can see the grid real quick. So it has this grid surface here, which the manufacturer says is a more effective and efficient way of grinding than if it was a flat surface. So I've used the 16-inch one a few times now, and I'm always pleasantly surprised at how easy it is to grind something. And what I mean, you have to watch them. So sometimes it's not like you can just turn it on, walk away from it. You do have to monitor it for a variety of reasons.
But you do walk away from it.
Oh, I do.
But you come back.
Yeah, I come back every so often
and
look
check
at
on it.
Yeah.
But you do not have to stand there and watch it.
You don't have to stand there and watch it?
Well, you could if you wanted to.
Well, if you're bored, you possibly could. But normally you don't really have to stand there and watch it. But it is not. And trust me on this one, you can't just turn it on and then go away for 4 or 5 hours and then come back and then expect it to be okay. So main reason why is because we're using water, and the water's going to evaporate, right? And then that's really what you sort of have to keep a track of, is making sure there's enough water and the abrasive is the right consistency.
So let's just say, because you've been doing this,
I have.
And so what's an average? Can you leave it for 2 hours? Not check it, or do you try to check it every hour?
You got to check it. I try to do I'm going to show you in a minute when we turn it on, but I can explain to you. So a lot of it has to do with what your glass is doing in here. So in a perfect world, it's going to, as this vibrates, your glass will move around and rotate at the same time, right? So it's going to use the whole surface, even though maybe your glass is smaller than that. And as long as it's doing that, I mean, I've done 40, 45 minutes and then come back and look at it. I think that's probably about, to me, I found to be a good, probably the maximum I want to do is about 40 or 45 minutes. I'm sure I've done an hour before, only because often I have it running while we're working here at Delphi, and sometimes I can't always get right back to it because I'm waiting on customers or something. But shorter would be maybe 20 minutes, so if you're, sometimes, like I said, you'll have some problem, we'll talk about it, I don't know, problem is too strong of a word, but sometimes it's not moving like you might want it to move, and then so you have to kind of help it do that. And then, so you just want to keep an eye. What you don't want it to do is stay in one spot, for 4 hours.
Right.
Because it will grind and leave a mark on the surface of this. This is aluminum, which it's supposed to be that way because it's a slightly softer metal, so it's better actually on the glass and stuff. You run into less problems. The abrasive is a silicon carbide, and if you can see again in the kit, you get half a pound of all of these, right, to get started. And I'll tell you, to get started, it's, especially if you're using this little 10-inch, it's plenty. I mean, it's a whole lot. And then cerium oxide is the polishing compound, and you do tend to go through a little bit more of that. And then when I'm going to talk about each step along the way here in a moment, and You'll see why the cerium oxide, you just use more of it in volume compared to everything else.
You don't use that each time. You use that at the end.
Yeah.
That's only for the very last step.
The cerium is at the very end of the last step.
That's what's getting you that really
that
nice
polished
edge.
Yeah, if you see that really nice polished edge, right? So, and then the other thing is, it comes with, this I think is like the greatest thing ever, right? So these are weights. I'm not sure, I think they're used in the scuba diving world to add weights so you can get down stuff. But so they're waterproof is sort of the point of that. It helps to have a little weight on the top of your piece while you're grinding it. And I'm going to show you the setup on that, or how I do it anyways, that I found to be kind of an easy way of doing it. It just goes faster. I've done it without the weight, and you can certainly do it without the weight. It just takes a little bit longer, right? Because you're just relying on the weight of the glass to kind of get, to settle into the adhesive and do the work for you.
Okay, so what's first?
Yeah, so what's first? So so the very first thing is what we would do. So there's, like I said, it's 5 steps, and so it goes by the size of the abrasive. So we're working with silicon carbide, and if you're not familiar with silicon carbide, it's actually it's really nice, because what it really does is just keep breaking down into smaller particles, right, as it works. So it still grinds, so it's not like something that gets dull over time. It just gets smaller particles. So it still keeps grinding, but sometimes it doesn't grind as aggressively the longer you use it, if that makes sense. So the first one is what they call a 60-90 grit, so relatively coarse. Especially if you, Kaylee can show you again, if you're looking at them, you can see the particles in that pretty well. And then it gets finer and finer as we go.
So what you do is you start with the most coarse.
So you start with the most aggressive, the most coarse one.
And work your way down.
And then work your way down. And we'll talk about it as we sort of go. So again, this big one's this is that little, you want to really, and I again know this from personal experience, you want to make sure you remember to put this back in, because you have to clean the tray out periodically. In between each step, you have to clean the tray out. And one time I forgot to put this in, and so the piece kind of banged up against the side, and I got a little chip on one of the edges because I was not being careful. So if you're not familiar, again, I told Val, I said we should leave a bowl where we haven't done anything to it, but I think it was really just because we ran out of time. I think it was the real
but
real
you
reason.
just defeated that.
But it's a little more dramatic, right? So so now you can see it, nice rolled edge. I'll let Kaylee grab it. So it's a nice rolled edge, but maybe you get tired of that. And I've been fusing for a while, and then I remember, at first I always liked that rolled edge, and then you're like, can I make this crisper or sharper? And then so that's where like these lap grinders or this hands-free vibrating grinder comes in at. Yeah, you can see how nice and flat and smooth the top of that is. You get really nice crisp edges, nice and shiny, right? That was
and this is
done
one
this way.
that's frosty before it actually got to the polishing stage.
So this is actually, there are 5 steps, as I was mentioning, and this is the first step. And Val and I were looking at it the other day, and we're not so sure how well that shows up, on the camera. But this was the most aggressive one. So again, the 60-90 grit, and if you look close, you can see little kind of pits or lines in it, just from either the grinding or from what's going on. And so what we're trying to do is get those out, right? And that's why we would move on to the next, this one is ready to move on to the next grit, which I was going to do, but I didn't do it. So this one here is actually, I just did it at the 400 grit, because the 120, 220, you probably wouldn't notice much difference, to be honest, between this and that one. But it does do a really nice job on it, right? So this is a 400 grit. And you could leave it like this. People do sometimes. They kind of like that little frosted look. It looks almost like it's been sandblasted or something. Especially if you're going to sandblast the rest of the piece, right? That would be very nice, right? That's not bad.
Because it's not sharp.
It's not sharp at all. Yeah, it's
Sometimes
real nice.
I think it looks like it could be, but it's not.
Yeah, so one of the things that happens with this machine, and you'll see, because I'm going to mix up some of the material, and we're going to turn this on a little bit, just so you guys can kind of hear what it looks like and what it does. But to be honest, we're on this table, which is not the most sturdiest of tables, and so it's going to vibrate like crazy. The recommendation is obviously have it on a really nice sturdy table.
Or
I do it on the floor a lot of times. Here at Delphi, all the floors are poured concrete, so I set them on the floor because happens to be also pretty flat and level. That's the other thing you want to make sure is that whatever surface you're using, that it's level. And then
let's talk about really quick too. It's sitting on something.
Oh yeah, so this is something that I do. I just started doing this is a rubber mat that we use here for soldering. It's a soldering mat, but I found that it doesn't vibrate as much. It doesn't. since
Or
it's
dance
vibrating,
around.
it wants to dance around or move a little bit. And I find that when I put it on this rubber mat on a table, it stays in place pretty good. So kind of a quick, easy little fix if you're concerned about it kind of walking on you or something.
And it's the right size even for the big one.
Yeah, no, isn't that? Yeah, something, of course, might surprise you, but we sell it here at Delphi, that rubber mat. So the other thing I wanted to point out real quick on this, I don't know how well you can see it, but there are holes. There's holes in this bottom base, right, in the ring. You can actually mount this to a table, which I'll tell you, if you do that, it's not going to move at all. And it really cuts down on the vibration. So you could bolt it to a table. The other advantage there is you could, if it's not level, if your table's not level, you could actually shim the bottom of this, and then when you bolted the unit down, it's not going to move on you, right? Because I know from personal experience, again, that, I've shimmed these on a table, and they will just eventually kind of vibrate off. It takes a little while, but they'll do it. So, again, mounting them is probably the best on a table, but otherwise...
Yeah, so then how do you clean it?
Oh, so the top just comes off.
So this comes off.
Oh, yeah, this whole thing just comes off. So you unscrew this, and this takes like
I'm
a
wondering,
hot minute.
See, look at this. How this is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the way it comes.
Yeah. But this is inside the thing, and this is outside.
Yeah, this is how they make it. Yeah, she's talking about, you can't see it, but so there's 3 legs to this, and you'll see on the back one.
This one looks like it should
sits
get
like
stuck
inside
in
a little bit. But I'll show you how the
see it?
table works, and then you actually don't have, it has to fit this thing. You don't need to take it all the way out, but you got to get it loose enough so you can pick it up, so it picks up and then slides off the back, right? So if you look at this side, you'll see these 2 little parts here. They hook onto the table, right? Are you getting a good picture of it? And then there's this little flat plate, is it here?
Yep.
And then that's where the bolt's going to catch and screw onto that. And that's what tightens it. And you need it tight on the table, or the top will just really, really vibrate. So it just slides here on the back like this. We slide it up until it gets to where that is. And then you got to find that little plate in the front, and then you just tighten it until it doesn't move. Because of that, it does. Yeah, and it's real easy to then pick it up, because you do have to clean this out in between, the different size grits. You got to clean it out, and usually it's consumable, meaning we don't necessarily save the grit. It depends, I guess. I mean, if you've been doing this for a while, then the grit just keeps, as I mentioned earlier, the grit just keeps getting finer and finer until it's not really grinding, right? So you might as well just move up to the next step anyways. But anyways, so there it is, nice and tight, right? Then the abrasive, like I'm ready to do the 600 grit. So we also sell, Delphi sells, you'll probably run out of grit. So we sell it like this in these 1-pound containers. All the sizes of the grit plus the cerium oxide, the same way we sell it in a 1-pound
And
container.
the weights we sell.
Yeah, the weights we sell separate because, so that's good. Thanks for asking and saying something about that, Kelly, because so the recommendation from the manufacturer is that you should add a little weight because it goes faster, and their recommendation is 1 to 1. So for every inch of diameter, you should add a pound. So I can tell you that I haven't done that yet because it seems like a lot of weight, but I'm going to show you guys here in a second what. On this one, I was doing 2 pounds for the longest time, and then when I was getting impatient, I added 2 more pounds, and I did 4 pounds. But I'm going to show you guys how I do that. So, but first, this is super easy to mix up. And again, all these directions, if you buy the unit, is in there and tells you like how much of the abrasive to add to water. Their recommendation is 2 to 3 teaspoons. Oh, I'm sorry, I totally lied. Tablespoons. I'm not a baker, so I don't really know the difference between those two. One's bigger, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
and so,
you're right.
like they're saying 2 to 3 tablespoons of this, and I just kind of sprinkle it around. And then I'll grab a couple. And then the 2 to 3 works probably really well for this 10-inch one. It's a little, not quite enough abrasive for the big 16-inch one, so you don't have to quite double it, but you'll have to add a little bit more. When we turn it on, you'll see what's going to happen, and then that'll give you some kind of an idea of like, I got to add some more. Then they recommend 1/3 of a cup of water for every like 2 to 3 tablespoons. So we're just going to add that in. And then I have a little trick that I forgot to bring it in here, but I always add 1 drop of soap to this. Like I just use the Dawn, like a dish soap, right? because what the soap does is it kind of breaks any of the surface tension, because what's happening here, you'll see it wants to kind of clump up a little bit because of the water, and the soap kind of takes that away. You don't notice it so much with some of the more coarse grits, but when it gets finer like this, and like one drop of soap, it works pretty good. And then you would, then we would put this on there, right? Now I'm going to show you guys.
You don't spread that out or anything?
No, because it'll vibrate.
It'll vibrate
Yeah,
out.
I'm going to turn it on real quick just so you guys can do this, and we'll see how this. That's not horrible,
No, that's not bad.
right?
You didn't have this under before, because I don't think, because that didn't sound near as loud as it did.
Yeah, that wasn't. We tried it just a couple minutes ago, but I thought it was much louder than that. So, yeah, do you see how it just kind of evens out and goes around? I mean, obviously a little clumps a little bit there in the middle because
So you just add a
it's
little
so
more water.
fine. Yeah, I'm just going to add a little bit more water. You can mix it up if you want to mix it up, but what's going to happen is when this starts spinning around, it's just going to pick that up and move it anyways, right? So I already. So here's a little trick that I have. So I know sometimes you're like, well, what am I going to do with these weights, right? Am I just going to balance the weights on top? Well, I guess you could, but they'll fall right off as soon as it vibrates. You could tape them on, which I've done that, and that works actually pretty well. But lately what I've been doing is I take the weights and I put them in a Ziploc bag, right? So I put them in a plastic bag, and it keeps them cleaner. Well, I don't know how big of a deal that is, but I find it easier to tape it onto the glass, to be honest. So then I just set that on there. Now what I'm using is some duct tape, and I've tried many duct tapes, so I know with the Gorilla Glue people are not really sponsoring us, but
that works good.
It actually works the best. And I've done a lot of cold working where things are getting wet, and you need to make sure things are secure. And I found that this black Gorilla Tape is really, really the best. So then you just come in and kind of just eyeball it where you're going to put it, and then stick it on, right? And then come over here. I could have done this easier, right? And then just tear it because it's duct tape. Oh gosh.
Okay.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go. And that's not good enough. You gotta go both directions because it will slide over it. So we're just going to come in here on this side, put that down, and you want it tight, right? Do it so that it's really tight. It's not going to move any. Because if it's loose in the tape, the vibration it'll push it out. So let's just keep doing that. That's good. I mean, you could do a lot of times. Again, the advantage to this tape is, as you're switching from grit to grit, a lot of times you don't have to retape it. In fact, I didn't have to retape it. The only time was a piece was hanging over a little bit. I didn't want it hanging over, so pull it off. There we go. Right? So then it also gives you something to hold on to, right? So you can pick up your piece, set it in there. And then I know it's a little loud, I apologize for that, but mainly it's because, again, as I mentioned before, it's the table we're on. It doesn't make this much noise normally. Yeah, what's going to fall off the table? That's good. So can you see it spinning? I mean, you see how it's just gradually just turning around? That's what it's supposed to do. Let me shut it off for a second. This is good, right? So it's tracking in the center pretty good, so that's good. So I guess this table is relatively level. Did you see it starting to turn a little bit? So here's the thing. So if it's not turning, if it's just staying in one place, you don't have enough weight, and you need to add more weight to it. But you can see there with just 2 pounds, it was moving,
was working good.
right? I mean, it was starting to rotate, right? So as long as it's rotating, that's all you need. Otherwise, if it's just in one spot, it can wear kind of unevenly. So that's why you want to do that. The other thing is, it should travel around, and it didn't. I didn't give it enough time to really see if it was going to do that. You can see it starting to move, and if it's not traveling around, then it's a water issue, right? Then you're not using enough water. Again, for me, I found that sometimes, a little extra water is not horrible. The manufacturer says you want the consistency of the abrasive and water to be creamy, is the term that they use. So I'm not sure. I think they say hand lotion or something. Mine is certainly not that thick. And if it's a little wet, again, it probably gives you a little more time not to have to worry about coming back and checking on it because that you still have that water in there and it might evaporate. The only thing I notice if I get it too wet, it might splash a tiny bit. So again, be careful where it's at. That's one reason why I've set it on the concrete floor. It's pretty easy to clean up.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then we just let this run. So time, right? So again, my experience has been that you'll probably spend more time on the very first time, the 80 to 90 grit. That probably takes the most time. And it shouldn't be more than 2 hours. If it's more than 2 hours and you probably didn't have enough weight on the glass, usually for me it's probably, it was about 2 hours, now that I think about it. Because I came back and checked on it every 40 minutes, and I did that 3 times. So there's the math. I just did the math in my head, right? So
good for you.
120 minutes, isn't it? Wow, that's crazy. I'm doing math, people. So that's always nice. So it's about 2 hours. And then...
That's actually pretty good.
It's not bad at all, right? I mean, you could do the whole thing in a single day if you're really trying, because each thing gets less and less. So I did this bowl. If you saw it a second ago, it looked pretty nice, right? And that was the 400 grit, and I think it was literally 40 minutes is all I did on that one.
That's
and then
good.
that's just when I went back and checked it. I might have been able to check it earlier, and it might have been good at a half an hour. And then this is the 600. So this one I would probably do about 40 minutes just to make sure. Now I find those sometimes. So I keep telling you it gets shorter and shorter, but when you go to the cerium oxide, that one is I'm not sure why, but sometimes it takes a long time and sometimes it takes like no time. I think it has something to do with the glass, whether the color you're using or something, right? They must have different kind of densities to them or something. Not 100% sure, but it still isn't. You would never do it more than 2 hours. You wouldn't.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. But
Nope.
what would be what
not at all.
timeline are we talking?
Nope.
No more than 2.
Yeah, the only thing is, like I said, it's like shorter and shorter, and then all of a sudden it goes back up when you're doing the cerium oxide. And so my point of that was, if you're expecting it always to be shorter, and then you go to the cerium oxide and think, I have to do it for half an hour, it might not be enough, and then you might have to go a little bit longer. So.
But still, you're saving so much time by walking away.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I tell you the nice thing is, as we've said before, that it's nowhere near as time consuming, right? As having to stand here on a lap grinder and keep working it. And we've already talked about how it's physically demanding, right? When you're doing other types of cold working, on your shoulders or on your back because you got to stand, right? I mean, gosh, I know that's not much fun.
We've even had customers who we've using the big laps, and you've had to take over.
Oh yeah, you have to tag team it sometimes, right? If someone gets tired and the other person's got to step in or something. Yeah, it can be tough.
And you also risk losing your piece if it catches.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
The lap.
That's a great point, right? Because
really.
as you get tired, right, it's harder to hold on to, right? I mean, you're getting tired, and then I'll tell you the cerium oxide. If you've never worked with it before, it gets on everything, and now everything's slick and smooth, and it makes it that much harder to hold on to, right? You're trying to hold on to something, right, with that. Usually I try to wear gloves or something that I think gives me a little bit better grip. But the advantage here is, again, I'm not holding it, so I don't have to worry about that. I do sometimes nudge it. So if you see it kind of getting caught on one corner a little bit, you can kind of nudge it sometimes and push it back to where it wants to go. The manufacturer, their recommendation actually is that it's ideal to try to cover at least 50% of the surface with the glass. So if your piece is smaller than that, they a lot of times recommend doing 2 pieces at once. And I grabbed, just to show you, I just bought some hose at the hardware store, right? Some kind of plastic tubing. And then I bought one that was a little narrower, right, that just fits inside, and cut that. And this is exactly, so you could do this, right, make your own little bumper guard. And then if we were grinding 2 pieces, right, you would just put them around 2 pieces, and they would just they would bump into each other, and they wouldn't bump into the end. So that's, they recommend too that, like, if you have more than one piece, it actually, the piece tends to move across the surface better if you have more than one piece, because they kind of bump into each other and shove each other around and stuff. Well, shove's maybe a strong word, but they kind of influence each other. I like that, Kaylee, guiding. That's a good one. They kind of guide each other around a little bit. So when you have one piece, I noticed that when I was doing this one, which is, I think it's like a 14-inch piece, I didn't have to do much to it. I mean, it really wanted to move around pretty good because of the size of it again. So.
Yeah, the weight of it.
You can see in that clear how crystal that is.
Yeah, I know. It got pretty clear. Eh? Yeah. So.
Yeah, no.
What else do we need to say about the?
But it's obviously we think it's a valuable tool. I mean, I think for a lot of people it could be really make a difference between being able to actually achieve that and then probably not.
Yeah, not right. And I think again, it's like one of the things I enjoy about it is it does give you an opportunity to make the rims of your bowls and things just a different look, right? Without much physical effort, right? I mean, it's still time, right? The time is probably very similar, but man,
no matter how you fire, you're not getting that flat edge.
Yeah, you're not getting this flat edge. No. Yeah, I mean, it looks a little more polished, or look the I had some other comment popped in my brain about that real quick, but
about what?
About it's not having to like physically just do it, I guess, is right, which I find probably the greatest thing. So you do sometimes have to take this off, retape it back on, right? So if I was going to put 2 more on, I do the same thing. I would just put these in Ziploc bags and just tape them back on top of that, right? So if you wanted to add some more weight, which
that's a good idea too, because then they don't get, especially with the cerium oxide.
So the finer you get, that's probably something else I should talk about too. The finer you get with the abrasive, I don't know if you saw the 600, but it is like finer than flour, right? So you should, probably wear a dust mask, right, while you're kind of messing around with it, right? So just because it does get in the air, but it gets all over the place, and it just makes that a little bit easier to clean up. So the cerium oxide is, I'm not going to actually mix them up and show you what that's like, but that one to me is really more like, think of it as being creamy is how you want to do that. But I saved the pad that I used in this one because of a couple reasons. Well, one is, so this is how I store the pad. So you should store the pad in plastic, right? So you shouldn't just leave this open out somewhere in your studio where dust and other stuff can get on it. You don't want to contaminate the polishing pad. People that do a lot of polishing will say, one speck of dirt can really just mess up your piece, right, that you spent all that time on. So after you do it, one of the things, if you can see, I'm going to pull out this one just so you can see the polishing pad again a little bit. It's thicker than you think, and so it's one of the reasons why it takes more cerium oxide is because you are soaking that cerium oxide into this pad, right? So this is done, obviously, again, without any of the abrasives. And so remember that this is only for polishing. So you don't put this in and then put abrasive on top of it, because then you've kind of ruined it, right? So it's just for polishing. But it takes a lot of the cerium oxide, and it takes water. You got to get it pretty wet and to absorb it. And this you don't want super wet. You don't want that as wet as I had this. So what I doing when I'm doing this one is I probably come back every 30 minutes or so just to make sure it doesn't get too dry. And I just use a spray bottle and I just spray some water back into it, to keep it wet. Because usually there's enough cerium oxide, as I mentioned before, it gets kind of
embedded
into the
texture of that pad.
That pad, and because at first, when you're doing it, you're going to look like you'll put some cerium oxide on, you'll start running it, and you'll like, where'd it go? Where'd all the cerium oxide go? Because it's all soaking in, and you got to add some more. So the beginning of it takes a little while to get it soaked. But now this already has cerium oxide in it. So when I use it again, which I have used this now a couple of times, I just have to get it wet. I'll mix up a little more cerium oxide, right, to add a little bit more in there. But I'm not adding anywhere near as much as you do at this point, because it's already kind of full of cerium oxide. But and it's messy. Well, it can be a little messy. But and then to clean up, I just rinse it. We're just rinsing it out with a hose and just go on to the next.
What do you feel about that going down your drain?
Yeah, I personally don't really have a problem with it. It's silicon carbide is it's a mineral, right? It comes out of the ground, so I figure I'm not really doing too much to it. I don't think you run the risk of plugging.
You don't of it.
No, I don't
plugging
think so.
your drain.
We haven't had to call
a
plumber.
Not here, man.
Anybody
would need to. It would be.
We kind of joke about it, but if you guys could see what we do to the sinks we have here, you'd be surprised that we never have to call it.
Since it's, like you say, since it's pretty natural, even if you did worry about that, you could just rinse it
and dump it out. So that's the other thing too. You're right.
Yeah.
You can dump it somewhere in the yard or in the dirt. It really is not toxic. It's inert. Like I said, it's literally a mineral. So it's just like ground up rock or something. So
cool. Okay. Well, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think that was good.
I think that was about it, right? Did we?
I think we covered it.
covered it pretty good.
If you have questions, let us know.
Yeah, I had just thought of one other thing. Sorry, just when I know we were just ready to close up. So I said something about leveling this, right? So, so if you have a level, which I have one in this room somewhere, right? Just put it on there and then you can see if it's level or not. If you're grinding and you're seeing that it's getting stuck in one spot, even if it's level, you can then try to shim the machine. And like I was saying there, you can, whatever, if you're mounting it down to the table, you can use little pieces of wood. You can use, I actually sometimes cut up some of this rubber pad and use little pieces of the rubber to just get it up. But what the manufacturer says, because I was asking the gentleman that's the president about this, and he said, because it's so counterintuitive. So like if it's stuck here, like on this side, my thought would be to shim this side where I'm standing, right, to get it to push back away. And he said, you don't want to do that. You actually want to shim the opposite side of where it's stuck. And the reason why, he says, because of the abrasive, the glass grabs the abrasive and it wants to climb it. So it will use that to kind of get up to where it needs to go. So, which I found really interesting. But he's right. I tried it, and he wasn't kidding. So it totally worked. So,
good tip.
Yeah, just a nice little tip there. And I'm not sure if that's in the handout. So that's one reason why I was just thinking of it when I was going on, or the directions they give you. So
yeah, good deal.
So, otherwise, if you have questions, as always, I know we're at the end here, but you can always reach out to us through email, Facebook at delphiglass.com, or you can always send us a message on Instagram or Facebook. Or
we'll never remember all those.
You
were close.
What else do we do? That's it.
I don't know. My paper's over
How can
there.
they get a hold of us on? How can they get a hold of us on YouTube? How do they?
You can leave comments. We see them there too.
There you go. Leave us a comment. So, well, thanks for joining us today. And
send us suggestions.
Yeah,
because this was a suggestion from someone. So this wasn't anything we chose to do on our own. So we do listen. So
we do listen. Yeah, I had a couple of people actually say some things to me, but of course I didn't. I was at a conference and I didn't jot it down. So you guys have to remind me. So anyways, but we're happy to we take suggestions. So we'll be back probably in a couple weeks, and
we'll have something.
We don't know what we're doing. So
it's going to be great.
Thanks.